I hear you. Do you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Good.
Okay, we'll call to order this Board of County Canvassers of Utah County, March 13th at 12:30 p.m. The first agenda item is to approve the minutes from November 22nd, 2022.
I'll make a motion to approve item number 1.
Okay, we have a motion
And I can second that.
and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Okay, that passes 3-0. Review the March 5th, 2024 presidential primary election summary report. Do we get? Yeah, go ahead. It looks like you have to hit your button, Aaron, and should give you a green light. There we go.
There we go. Thanks, Alice. So first I want to thank the Recorder's Office. The Recorder's Office supplied 3 auditors for us yesterday. We have to have at least one person that is not employed by the County Clerk's Office to perform the audit. We had 3 volunteers from the Recorder's Office. And also, I'd also like to thank Tom Sakovich's office for providing his, what's your title? Senior Policy Advisor, Lisa. She came and watched the audit also. So thank you, Tom Sakovich's office. I'm here to give a brief summary of the statistics. You have a copy of the statistics. But we had 4,567 ballots counted, and we had in-person of 288, and UACAVA of 34, and provisionals of 23 for a total of 4,912 ballots. It says that that was like a participation rate of like 1%, but that 1.4% turnout. But that's kind of misleading. I just want to give you a statistic of what I think is the true statistic there, and that's the number of ballots that we actually sent out because it was an open primary. Anyone could have voted, but it was typically just the Democrats and a few unaffiliateds and a few Republicans that did. We sent out 226,337 ballots. And of those, the 419, that ended up being 18.6% participation rate. That's what I feel is the true participation rate. And we had, let's see, 247 challenged, and we were able to cure all of them but 168. I believe a lot of those probably didn't cure because of the actual percentage of people that voted for Biden, so they didn't feel like they needed to cure it because it wouldn't have made a difference. So I think that's why we had like 168 that were still uncured.
Now you said 247, but I show 248. 248.
248 that were challenged,
Okay.
but the total that did not cure was 168. So the difference being 70 that did cure.
Okay.
So I think, they had probably twice as many that didn't cure that did cure. But that was probably because they just saw the results and said, I'm good with it. We were able to balance our ballots to counted ballots in Vista down to 0 every night. And we submitted those numbers to the lieutenant governors every night. So everything was balanced every night. So I think that these are true and accurate numbers that we have reported to the state.
653 number of ballots rejected for non-curable reasons were
No, those were undeliverable.
undeliverable. Okay.
So that actually helps us. I guess the mail-in process, the universal mail-in ballot processing, since we're having to send out ballots to everybody, we get a lot of return envelopes back, so that we're able to inactivate those voters. So we're not constantly sending out ballots to them.
That makes sense. Thanks.
This is an extraordinary, exhaustive process. You guys are amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
So the total number of ballots returned undeliverable was 2.8%. Is that what the 730 number is?
Yes. So the total number of ballots sent out and total returned was 2.8%. And we did have 77 ballots returned with postmarks after the deadline.
Okay, so that's what rejected
March
for
4th.
non-curable reasons means, is return to sender.
That's the state's wording.
Okay. Other questions?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. I did think it was a little bit, I noticed as well that the turnout percentage was really low. And so I did call up to the state election office today and ask about that. And they actually mentioned that they had sent an email to the county. Mark Mitchell sent an email that said the number we were supposed to use for voter turnout percentage was 25,881, which is active registered Democrats. So I think this report needs to reflect the active registered Democrats in order to comply with what the state asked for the summary report.
Okay, that's not the information that we received from the Lieutenant Governor's office, but we could change that. But I would actually say that should be, the number should be 26,337 because that's the actual number of ballots that we sent out to the number of Democrats plus those that requested a ballot.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understand. I think, and you look at this, I mean, even in any election, typically you run the voter percentage based off of that first run, and then you get more people that register to vote because you can register to vote up to 11 days before an election, plus we have same-day voter registrations. But we actually cut that off at the 21-day mark, and so it's always a little bit misleading, but whatever number it is that they choose for us to use, we do need to use that number for consistency for reporting across the state.
Hi, Brian Vokes, Chief Deputy Clerk. Problem if we were to use that number is if every single voter that's a registered Democrat were to vote, and then we had these non-Democrats vote, we would end up with a voter turnout above 100%. So that's the problem with that number. That's why Aaron has chosen a different number. The 26.
Well, that was
what
the 26,337.
Yeah.
Well, that was the actual number of ballots that were sent out, and then we have to do an extract of people that called us and said they didn't get their ballot, so we have to cancel that ballot and send
Yeah.
out a new ballot, plus all of the, like I said, all the Republicans and unregistered and other parties that requested a ballot.
So your number, the 26,337, does that include duplicate ballots for people that said they didn't get theirs and you resent it out?
No, that's pluses and minuses. So if they called and said they didn't get it, we subtracted those because they were spoiled ballots and then added back the ones that we sent out in the extracts.
Okay. So I agree either way. I mean,
And
that
that-
always frustrated me when I would say, hey, you're telling me to use the voter turnout percentage for this day, but then we had, X number of thousands of people that registered to vote between that day and the day of the election. Whatever that number is, we just need to be consistent with the state. But either way, the registered voter total and the voter turnout percentage, I was told needs to not be the total active registered voters, which is the 345, 268. It should either be the 25 or 26,000.
Well, we were told that since it's an open primary, anybody can vote in the Democrat primary, that we were to use that number. But like I said, I felt that that's misleading turnout, so that's
I
why
would agree with you.
I calculated with the 26,337 for a 18.6% turnout.
Yeah, that makes much more sense. I think that makes much more sense. So I wouldn't mind clarification from the state on that number, though, because they did say that Mark Mitchell sent out a number that we were supposed to use. So we need to make sure that we're consistent
you send that
across
out?
the counters, the counties.
February 27th, it was on the FTP. But then that's when we looked at it and we chose to use the ballots sent out because we didn't 100% correct. So we, correct me if I'm wrong, we put in the VISTA into election line.
Yeah. I don't think Commissioner Sakovic can hear this, sorry.
No, just come up to the mic.
Unless,
I'm like, it was.
No worries, you're good. Just up at the mic so we can hear it.
Nicole
I
Stevens.
hear you now if you're speaking.
Sorry. I was just saying that number was sent to us on the FTP by the state back in February. But when we looked at it, we chose to use that number because, again, that would be the percentage higher than 100%. So our ballot center with ES&S and Aaron's decision was to use that other number. So we did have that number, but we were looking at ballots sent versus actual registered voters. So
Which either way, then ballots sent instead of, for the statistics and for the percentage for this report, if you chose to use the 26, did you say 337? Then that's the number that should be rather than the 245, 268.
345.
Yeah, 345, 268, thank you. So the voter percentage, I think we should probably update that, whichever way you choose to use, but we should update that.
Which, like Aaron highlighted, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's more reflective at the 18.6%.
Yeah, so I agree with you,
Aaron
Aaron,
highlighted
that's
it
more
first.
reflective. I think that's a better use.
Okay.
Next question would be, you've got your voter turnout total, the ballots cast is 4,912, but the total votes cast is 4,879. That's a difference of 33 ballots. Do we know what those 33 ballots are?
Wait, which number? The 4912 and which one?
Yeah, so 4912, and then on the very next page, under total votes cast, when you're looking at the totals for the election, it's 4,879. So there's a difference of 33.
Are you talking about vote counts by precinct?
No, so it's like on the first page, you've got, the 4912 here, and then the second page, when you're looking at the totals for votes counted, so votes cast and votes counted, there's a difference of 33 ballots.
Mark, do you know where those 33, were there 33 undervotes or 33 people who did not cast a valid
it's a combination of undervotes, overvotes, and blank ballots.
and blank ballots? Because there was a TikTok, there were people on TikTok that were saying that they needed to cast a blank ballot with something written. I can't remember what term they used.
Like a protest vote,
Uncommitted.
like a protest vote or
A
something?
protest vote, so
Okay.
it's probably
just need to-
33 of those.
Okay, yeah, if we can
But that
account
would
for
not
that.
be, those would typically not be reflected on this report.
Yeah, that would make sense. If you can,
While they're looking at that, what kind of time frame, since this is my first canvas, do you have as far as, like, is it I know
Yeah,
you were
we
able
do-
to get everything to zero at night, and it's not as big, obviously, but is it a week? Is it 2 weeks? Because it's been about 1 week, right?
It's been 1 week. Yeah, I guess we elected to do it 1 week after the election, mainly because ES&S wanted to come out and update our machines for the primary.
Coming.
And in the time constraints, they asked us if we could do it in a week because it was such a small election instead of waiting 2 weeks.
yeah, with us being
So
a
it's
Super
been-
Tuesday state, turnaround time between elections
Yeah, it
is
was
crazy.
a really quick turnaround, but it was such a small election that it was possible.
Okay. Terrific.
Yeah, we only had to pull our hair out for 1 week instead of 2 weeks.
So,
Good work.
I mean, that's a great question. In fact, that was one of my next questions that I was going to ask. Leads into that, and that's just like 2/3 of the of the curable ballots not being cured. I wondered if that had something to do with it. Now, with the outcome of this election, because that's 168 votes, and there was a bigger gap than 168 between the winner. I could see that that's not a big deal for this election, but looking into the future for maybe a primary or a general, especially if there are any races that are going to be close on a ballot, I wonder if shortening that time that people had available to cure is the reason, because 2/3 of the ballots that are curable being uncured is really high. And I wonder if that plays into it.
That deadline is set by the state.
Yeah, but typically it's
So-
a 2-week deadline, not a 7-day deadline. That's what I'm saying.
But for the cures, they had to cure by Friday at 5 p.m.
But it's based off the canvas date.
It's based off the canvas date.
Before canvas.
A week ago, it would have been Friday.
Right, so they would have had twice as much time to cure their ballots.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't make a difference in the outcome of this race, but in the grand scheme of things, that's a big percentage.
Right. And we do have IT working on a new cure process that will help us automate a lot of the emails and letters. And we're going to start with the Qualtrics contract. We're going to start using MMS.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
And this is a unique election. We would normally not do the canvassing 8 days later. We would try to take the full 14 days. And that's normally what we would do. And that's what we'll be doing later
And we
this
did with
year.
all the municipal elections.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. And then I don't know if that's what made the difference, but I saw that number and thought, wow, that's high. But then that would make sense that in a regular election, we would do 14 days and give people twice as much time.
Yes.
We could arguably schedule that meeting in July then, right? Knowing there's probably a
Did get it on our
primary
calendars. So
and not
we
a
have it
terrible idea to understand when we're going to canvass.
for the June and in November for the general
Not
as
that
well.
it wasn't difficult getting the commissioners together today to do this, but just
And
something
we doubled the audit. We're required by statute to do a 1% audit. But we selected an extra batch and actually ended up being a little bit more than 2%. The state had us audit some very small batches because it was such a small election, but we picked a more full box to add to the audit that we performed.
So do you know how many ballots that was? You said it was about 2%, so
It was,
probably about 5.
I think there was like 45 ballots that they asked us to audit, and then we picked an additional box that had 80 ballots in it.
Okay, so like 125. That's great.
132 total.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. One other question that I had was just on the number of envelopes with the signatures that does not match. That was at 4.6%. That's 5 times normal. I'm wondering if it's because it was such a small, or if, I don't know. That was just one number that I noticed was higher than typical. I don't know if you have any statements or on that.
We're taking a more closer look at the signatures.
Okay.
And based upon some of the training that we received, they brought in an additional training for us about a month and a half ago. And one of the statements they said, when in doubt, throw it out. I hate using the word throw it out because we're not throwing it out. I like to say, when in doubt, cure it out. So we are probably a little bit more strict and look at those signatures a little bit more earnestly. And that's why we're developing a more automated process to cure these ballots out a little bit better.
I think I was told once that the number one challenge is missionary moms signing missionary ballots, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a real thing in our area, so.
Yeah.
I appreciate the extra look at the signatures.
And it's also, a lot of it is, people are getting a lot more sloppy with their signatures because they're used to signing up, iPads or just digitally. And so it's becoming, signatures are less and less formal. And so it becomes more and more difficult to verify those signatures. And so it's almost like you need to train the voters. There's your good signature, and then there's your sloppy signature. We've even considered asking them to put both signatures do your sloppy and your good signature so that we can verify it. But that would need to be a change in the instructions.
Yeah.
At our household with younger first time voters, like as I've had that the last 3 or 4 years with some of my kids, it's like,
And they're still
I love
developing
that
their signatures.
they've had to cure it. Each one of them. I'm like, my daughter that just barely turned 18, I said, I guarantee you're going to have to cure this thing. And sure enough, it was in this last election in November, she had to cure, because it was her first time voting.
Yeah.
But that's great. That's a good process. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and the driver's license where most people register, it's on a digital pad. And so it's not really it comes across kind of pixelated. And it's if they sign with their finger movements are different than with the pen movement. It's just muscle memory. And so it's a little bit more difficult.
So, the only reason I bring it up is none of these are a big issue now, but I could see when we've got 300,000 ballots getting returned, if
Yes.
5% of those aren't matching, and that's 15,000 votes, and we've got several highly competitive House and Senate races in our district, if some of those votes are within 5%, and we've got roughly 5% that were not
Needing to be
counted,
cured.
I could see that becoming an issue this fall or in the primary in the summer.
Yeah. And that's why we've been working
That's exactly right.
on automating the cure process, and we're working with IT right now to even make that even better.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah.
I have an answer to your 33 ballots.
Yes.
So we have 5 overvotes and 28 undervotes. And we will get the document that states those to you guys.
Perfect. Even though that's not on the state form, it may help. Like there's a 1L is explain.
Right.
Maybe putting
So
notes in.
we also submit to a state website, enhanced voting, and that's on the XML file that they have. So it is posted on their website as those, but we'll make sure you guys get those copies in the future.
Yeah. Oh, and also on the official report, because I don't want somebody to come and be like, there's votes missing.
Yep.
So putting that in the explain category can keep people from making assumptions that there's missing votes when really those are accounted for.
Yeah, and
Thank
we
you for
got
looking that up.
reprimanded because last time during the municipal elections, we added some lines in this form, and they reprimanded us and said, don't add any lines to that because they
State
have
form?
a
Yeah, I just wonder in the
process
1L,
that takes
the
that
explain.
data and consolidates it. So we can't add to this form.
But we can add maybe a key on the back for them, so when we
Yeah.
submit it.
Right.
And Alice highlighted that July 9th is sort of what we've got penciled, and November 19th currently penciled, but we can
Okay.
move and shake if your office is like,
Yeah.
right, we need to,
Yeah.
but for now, we can kind of plan on that. Okay, cool. Great. So item 2 is review, but I don't know if there's an action on item 2 until you get to item 3 today.
Yeah, I don't think there
Which is
is.
approve and authorize.
So I
the
think I
chair to
got
sign.
my questions answered. I think I just, the two things that I wanted to summarize real quick. The one is we need verification from the state on what number they're expecting on the registered voters and voter turnout percentages. So, because if we give them what they're not expecting, they're going to reject it. And so there's that question, and then just the other one with the heightened scrutiny on signatures. Let's make sure that we have a process to get those cures through, because I don't want you to be in a position where we're within a margin of error on an election and it comes down to signatures, and then we've got a lawsuit because someone is claiming we disenfranchised voters because we didn't count their signature. And I mean, I've seen
Right.
it. So I want to make sure we're avoiding that.
Right. And then the other challenge is if you don't cure the signatures, you could have another lawsuit saying you just approved every signature and you didn't verify that it was a valid ballot. So, yeah, we're trying to,
I think in that lawsuit, the side that says you disenfranchise someone who returned their ballot, the judge typically gives preferential to that. So we want to make sure that we're doing what we can, that you've got your process down, and that, because 4.6 is a little high. Other than that, I'm good with number 2, but to go through and approve number 3, I want to make sure this is a report that the state's going to accept if we're not following
So if you were to wait, if that's, I don't know what you're suggesting, but do we have to have another board of canvassers further down the road, or is there some action we can take? And then
Could we say
what if
something
the state
like?
doesn't reject it?
Well, could we say we approve pending clarification from the state on that number? And then whichever direction the state gives us, we will use that number. Could we make a motion like that, Adam?
Yes, Commissioner, we could do that.
Okay. With that said, I will make a motion to approve item number 3 with the caveat that we check with the state and see which number they want us to use, and then we make sure that is the number on the report.
Okay.
Which to me has been similar to what we've done in the past years, but I can support that process, that motion.
That's a second, Commissioner?
Yep.
Okay, we've got a motion on the table and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, thank you.
So does that mean that we need to call the state, verify which number they want there, and if they want us to change it, send it to you for verification?
You can change it. With that motion, it's basically verified. Just send us the updated report.
Okay,
Just for an FYI. But with that motion, whatever they say to do, you can enter that and you're good.
okay.
Yeah, and
That's
again, you
correct.
highlighted it perfectly at the start with your data of what the true voter turnout was, right? And so,
Right.
And I agree with you. I think the number, I think using the state number doesn't make any sense.
yeah, so,
Okay.
The whole
yeah,
number.
appreciate that. Okay, next, final is any public comment.
Just real quick, I just want to thank our election staff. They did a fantastic job. Chris, this is her first election being the elections director. This is Nikki Stevens' first election being the assistant elections director. This is Cambria Cantrell's first election as the election supervisor. This is Mark Davies' first election running the ballot processing center. And I want to thank all their teams too, because all those that work under them did a tremendous job. And I just want to thank Aaron. He's almost always the last to leave. He is very devoted to the reconciliation process and making sure that we account for any anomalies in the numbers. And he does that every single day during the tabulation process. So just a big thank you to everyone that made this election very successful. And I think we really learned a lot about what we all need to do going forward as we face a couple of much bigger elections ahead of us the rest of this year. So thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
All right, motion to adjourn.
Got a motion?
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and motion. Let's go get that done. Thank you.
Okay, that was a second. All in favor, say aye.
I'm sorry.
Aye.
I
I knew what you meant, Tom.
I'm just ready to do a basketball hoop.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Aaron and your team. Good work.